What's up, guys? It's me, Travis. Welcome to your 21st Android tutorial for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically finish our list activity and kind of talk through all this nonsense that's going on, because I know most of you guys are confused. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of this error for the most part. And we're just going to go over and see what the error is. It says surround with a try and catch, because basically we could say whatever we want. We could say, starting point blah blah blah, and be like, yeah, create a class for that, and it's going to be like, hey, you tried to trick me, there's no class like that, and I spent the past 4 hours trying to do that, and basically our application isn't going to look like that. So we need to surround this with a try. So we're going to go above here and type try and put a bracket, and then we're going to also close off our try bracket right here after we try to start the activity, and then we get rid of that error. The next thing we need to do is catch an exception. For example, we're going to use the exception type class not found. So again, if this class is not found, it's going to give us that exception. So we're going to say catch, and then we have to define the exception within parentheses, and again the exception type is called class not found exception. We're going to label this exception, or give this variable the type, the label E, and then we need to create a new bracket. And I'll try and keep all the brackets so you guys can keep track of everything. I remember that was kind of difficult when I was a new programmer. So there we go, E dot print stack trace. Again, this is just for debugging. We'll get into this stuff later, probably, maybe. I mean, it's not too important. It's basically going to throw it around and not worry about it. So there we go. We kind of have our brackets set up. But now let's actually get into making this application useful, because now each time an item is clicked, it's just going to start up our starting point class. So what we want to do is we want to have it start up a class according to the items that's clicked. But before we actually do that, let me just do an overview of what this application is doing and what we set up. So we set up a string array up here called classes, and we set up a list array, or a list adapter, which is basically like a list view. And within the list view, it has list items, which we defined here, just the standard kind of look of the list item here. And each list item is going to have one position within our string array. So we're going to have 7 list items total. And when any of those list items are clicked, it's going to call this onListItemClicked method. And it's also going to give us some information. It's going to give us basically which list view was clicked. It's going to label that L. It's going to tell us which view is clicked. It's going to label that V. And the most important one that we're actually going to use, it's going to tell us the position of within the list view that was clicked. And basically that's going to coincide with the position of our string array, so we know kind of the text that was clicked as well. For the most part, think of it like that. It also tells us an ID. So what we're going to do is go right within these brackets here, and we're going to set up a new string. We're just going to call this string local class, or I don't know, we're going to call it cheese, just so we don't have to think and all that good stuff. So what we're going to set this string equal to is basically, we're going to say like our classes array that we set up at the beginning, and we can set it up to something like 4, for example. And basically what this would be equal to, or this is the 4th position within our class array up here. So we have position 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So basically it's the same thing as saying, at the moment it's the same thing as saying this. So we don't want to actually do that. But that's kind of how this variable is going to work. Our cheese variable is going to be equal to just one spot of our classes array. But since we're getting the position, it's giving us that data, we can use this variable that they called position within this class. Oh, I'm sorry. And we want to also move this string below the super line right here. So I'm sorry for that. But okay, there's our string variable, and we can use this position kind of data that's being passed in, so we can just say position within here, because again it's an integer, so it's going to tell us what position was clicked. So now cheese equals basically the position. So the 0th position was clicked, this cheese variable is going to equal starting point. The 5th position was clicked, it's going to equal example 5. So now what we can do is we can set up a class according to which position was clicked, or which list item was clicked. So we can do that by using this string variable, because again, this class method basically is using a string within its parentheses. So what we can do is we can delete this, but still make sure you have your period there after your package name, and we can just say plus string, or I'm sorry, plus cheese. I was thinking of string cheese because that's delicious. But there we go. So now it's going to open or give this path to whatever list item was clicked. So if position 0 is clicked, it's going to say our package name plus starting point, and then it's going to create a class variable, and then it's going to set up an intent according to that class variable. Again, I showed you guys a new way to do it where it takes a context and then a class variable, and then it's going to start that activity. Now if we click, for example, position 5, again, it's going to set this equal to examples 5, and it's going to try to set up a class variable for our package name example 5, but since we don't have that, we're going to get an error, and it's not going to work, or it's not going to work, or I'm sorry, I said that twice. It's basically just not going to work since we don't have that class, and it's going to catch, or it's going to create an exception called exception not found, and we're just going to kind of log that within the debugger. So that's what that catch is doing. So hopefully that kind of made sense, guys. But that's kind of how you can use Java by, instead of typing a ton of lines of code, you can just kind of use these or get some information from a method and then use it within there to do that. The only other thing we're going to do real quick is set this up in the manifest. So we're going to go into the manifest, and I must have been messing around with this, so just going to fix it real quick. Your manifest should be looking like this. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to copy the starting point activity and paste it again below. And we're going to change this to our new class called menu. We're going to give this the action name menu. Then what we're going to do is we're going to open our splash class up here and change, instead of it starting up the starting point class, we want to start up this menu class. So we're just going to use the action name that we just set up in the manifest. So there you go. Now our application should be working. I'm just going to test it out, make sure I don't get any errors. And again, I know guys, I know this is probably confusing. You probably don't understand everything, or maybe even 5% of that list activity you guys understand. Don't worry, because it's going to get easier. We're going to get into some simple stuff in the next tutorial. So thanks again for watching, but there we go. We have our list activity started, and if we click like examples 1, 2, 3, it's not going to do anything. It's going to throw that exception. But if we click starting point, it's going to open up our starting point class. So, and again, we did that through setting up a class variable instead of using the action name. So thanks again for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Have a good one.